I can guarantee you that as Attorney General, I will absolutely not cooperate with federal authorities on any level when it comes to the prosecution of people that are abiding by Michigan state law.
Yeah.
There's a federal task force that oftentimes they will involve state entities, not the Office of Michigan Attorney General. We will not participate in that in any way, shape, or form. The next thing that I would do is this. I would make certain to try to incentivize the locals, and when I say this, I mean local sheriff's departments, county sheriff's departments, local police departments, local county prosecutors, to not work with the feds either. And this is if they are attempting to prosecute people who are abiding by state law. And how I would do that is this. I think I would go into those communities where it appeared as though you had a sheriff that was cooperating with the feds in terms of wanting to go after a business that was operating legally under state law, and say to them, listen, I know that you have this problem in your community. You have a pill mill that's operating. You have a rogue doctor that is prescribing tens of thousands of pills of Vicodin or OxyContin. Let me come in and let me assist you with your opioid problem. And why don't you leave those businesses alone? Because they're abiding by state law. They're not hurting anybody. Why disrupt an otherwise legally functioning business, a caregiver or patients, when I could be actually helping you with things that will help your community instead of having dozens of overdoses from opioids potentially in a single weekend because you have somebody out there that is prescribing or who is delivering some sort of product such as a fentanyl-laced product, and you really have suffering in the community. Let me come in and help you with that and leave the marijuana businesses that are operating properly under state law alone. The other thing I would do is this. When you are involved in a case, when you are the prosecutor, it is incumbent upon you not to try to sway potential jurors in a case. But I have no problem if the federal authorities bring marijuana cases, again, prosecuting people for things that they are compliant with state law under. I have no problem going out to, say, the federal courthouse in Grand Rapids, because you know it's going to happen in Grand Rapids, and standing there in front of the courthouse and talking openly about the fact that it's wrong that the federal government is using resources to prosecute people who are compliant with state law. And the loudest voice in the state in making that proclamation and making people understand that the residents of this state passed these laws for a reason, and we don't need Jeff Sessions and we don't need federal overreach coming in and deciding for us what our marijuana laws ought to be and putting our state residents into jail or into prison. We don't need that, and I will not cooperate with that kind of activity.
Hi, Wayne Bernard. This is to both of the candidates. Consumers Action Reports. What are the statute of limitations on those, and have you guys done any of them?
Consumer action reports? Candidate Nessel?
Most of those types of civil cases, generally, they're 2 or 3 year statute of limitations, and I mean, I have not personally handled any of those. But, what I intend to do, and what I think is very important to do, is to make certain that on consumer protection issues that we take the office of Attorney General, we go back to the Frank Kelly days when we had the most robust consumer protection office any place in the entire United States, and to make certain that we have people that are excellent attorneys that have handled these cases before and that understand how to best pursue actions when you have companies that are engaged in deceptive marketing practices, when you have companies that are ripping off people based on subprime loans and predatory lending or your payday lenders.
Yes.
Whether or not we have people that are putting out products that are just flat out dangerous. Whether we have Monsanto, who is creating a weed killer that they market as being safe to use around kids and pets. And we know that it's deadly. What we have to do is make certain that we have a robust department and that they are going after businesses which create harm to the public. And we used to have that in this state, but we don't anymore because instead we just have a government that protects these entities at any cost. And let me say this, if you're worried for a second about, well, how are we going to pay for that? That sounds expensive. But the fact of the matter is, it pays for itself. Because when you have state AGs that are willing to pursue these actions, we are talking about sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars in settlements that come back to your state to indemnify those who have been harmed, and that go actually into the state treasury. So by virtue of the fact that we have an AG that does not bring these actions anymore, we as tax dollars are actually, as taxpayers, we're losing out on that money. And in huge numbers. And I actually had a conversation with Mike Duggan about this just a few weeks ago. We were talking about the crash in 2007, 2008, and all of the homeowners who had been ripped off by some of these, Wells Fargo or Countrywide type of lenders, and how there were other states, other AGs around the country that had participated in those lawsuits, and that money went right back into those cities and right back into helping people who had lost their homes as a result of being taken advantage of by these companies. And he was complaining, saying he begged and pleaded with Bill Schuette to file on to those cases, to sign on, and he refused to do so. And as a result, that's money that was lost to the residents of the city of Detroit that really rightfully belonged to them. And so I will make certain that that doesn't happen. And whenever you have businesses that are injuring the residents of this state, that they are held accountable.
I will do everything possible to see that consumers are protected, starting with payday. In Michigan, let me ask you this. How many of you would like to see a return on your investment of 300% over the course of a year?
All right.
300%. Payday loans, they're limited. But if you take out 2 payday loans that come to $600, and you have to pay them back within a period of 2 weeks, you have to pay a minimum of $75 as the fee for those loans. Over the course of a year, that's a 300% return. Now, I had a partner who once represented some unsavory characters in what used to be called the mafia. I'll bet they were looking at him and saying, man, 300%, wow, man, we can't do that? Yeah. So I would look at those kinds of things. Water. Here in the city of Detroit, why does water cost so much? I still can't understand it, and I've worked with groups of churches trying to figure out why the cost of water has risen so dramatically over the course of the Duggan administration. Still don't know. That's consumer protection. And frankly, I don't want to hear the crocodile tears. I don't want to see the crocodile tears of the mayor of this city talking about, well, I asked Bill Schuette to do this, when there are people in the city who could have benefited from the funds that were given to the city of Detroit when President Obama was in office to keep people in their homes. Instead, those funds actually went to demolishing properties. So I don't want to hear his boo-hoos. The fact of the matter is if you are going to really look out for consumers, you can't fall for the okie doke. You've got to be willing to look behind what's going on and understand it. And then you've got to be willing to act on it, no matter what it means for you as an individual. I mean, I've handled cases before where literally my life was in danger. But I did it anyway. Even though it meant sending my wife and son somewhere else while I handled the matter. You want somebody who's going to act for you each and every day, no matter what the consequences. And that's what I promise to give to you.
I'd like to remind everyone the candidates will be available afterwards to answer some questions. Because of our time limitations, I apologize. We're going to go to final remarks here, and then we'll have an opportunity for the candidates to circulate, and you can speak to them one-on-one on the issues we didn't get to cover. I apologize if not everyone got their question answered. So, in using our 1-2-2-1 rotation, with your final closing remarks, candidate Bill Noakes.
Even though there are times when I talk about myself, those times are rare. Events like this, you have to tell something about yourself for people to get to know you. Let me start with this. I've been a practicing attorney and business executive for 35 years. I've been an adjunct professor over the course of the last decade, teaching at the University of Chicago Law School, which also happens to be the law school that Barack Obama taught at, and that also happens to be the law school I graduated from. Teaching at Southern Methodist University, teaching at Grand Valley State University, and currently I teach at the University of Michigan Dearborn. I'm also a licensed Baptist minister. Later in life, I decided that I would study theology, and was licensed to preach, and I preach under Dr. James C. Perkins over at Greater Christ Baptist Church on the East Side. I've been in the Air Force. I've been an attorney with the Securities and Exchange Commission, where I chased insider traders on Wall Street. I work for General Motors as an attorney for them, representing them in cases around the country. I've been an attorney in private practice where I've represented companies like Smith & Wesson and Sturm Ruger. I do believe in the Second Amendment, but I also believe that there's a legitimate right to control guns on the streets. There is no reason for anybody to have an AR-15. No, I understand, I need it for home defense. It's like, come on, man. AR-15, AK-47, bump stops. No, you don't. And then I even heard one guy say, well, I use mine for hunting. It's like, I don't want to eat venison that's been shot up by an AR-15. I mean, it's bad enough if you don't get all the buckshot out of it. You don't want something that's been sliced up by an AR-15. I've been Deputy Wayne County Corporation Counsel. There's a little street that runs between I-75 and M10, the Lodge. It's called the Davison Freeway. It exists because I sued Governor Engler back in 1995 on behalf of Wayne County and Highland Park. That's why it's there. Otherwise, it was going to be closed. After that, I went to work for a minority-owned automotive supplier, a $200 million black-owned company. And then from there, I went down to Washington, where I prosecuted the Secretary of Agriculture for corruption. Meantime, doing stints on Channel 4 News as a legal commentator and Court TV as a legal commentator. When I came back to Detroit, I joined a law firm in Detroit, Jaffe Ray, and I was with them and ultimately was recruited away to become the general counsel of Meyer Incorporated in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So for almost a decade, I was the executive vice president and general counsel, and along the way picked up some other responsibilities, including ultimately being the second in command at Meyer during the last 2 to 3 years of my time. Now what do? I spend much of my time representing people who can't afford a lawyer. And when I say can't afford a lawyer, I mean can't afford a penny. I'm not saying I do indigent defense, I'm saying I do PO defense. PO, because they can't afford the extra O and R. And so part of it is if you live your life, and if you take something out, you doggone well better put something back in. And so that's who I am. That's what I promise to you, to give you the best of me. Well, not the best, my wife gives that, but some of me. Ultimately, working for you as the Attorney General of the state of Michigan. Because we are one people in one Michigan. And if we don't learn to live together, then we might as well just pack it in now. And we see what it's like under a President Trump. We don't need that here in Michigan. We've seen it under a governor, one tough nerd, and shooty on duty. Or should I say duty on shooty? The fact of the matter is it's time for a change, and I intend to be the champion of the people, all of them.
Closing remarks, candidate Dana Nessel.
So one of the reasons why I decided to do this semi-legalized forum is because I wanted to talk about the issue pertaining to marijuana in our state. You know, I have some incredibly strong feelings about that, and I have had those for quite some time. I have, for a long time now, recognized the injustice of our laws as it pertains to those who utilize marijuana. And quite frankly, it's been a very long time since I've understood any reason why we use our resources to prosecute people for this. And just very honestly, I have never really understood the difference between those of you who are enjoying a beer or a cocktail and people who instead choose to use marijuana. And I will say this, after many years prosecuting some of the most serious cases that you can imagine. And I'm talking about, obviously, you know, murders and rapes and robberies and carjackings and so forth. I have never once in my career ever heard anyone utter these words. Well, you know, he was always a nice guy, except for when he was smoking weed.